Shalom and welcome again to Seekers of Meaning, the podcast TV arm of Jewish Sacred Aging. I'm your host, Rabbi Richard Address. Thank you very, very much for joining us. We do appreciate your time. If you have a suggestion or a comment about the show or suggestions for future shows, please feel free to email me at Rabbi Address at jewishsacredaging.com. Visit the website, jewishsacredaging.com, and also visit the Facebook page, conveniently noted as Jewish Sacred Aging on Facebook. So some of you may have heard about this thing called artificial intelligence. It seems to be all over the place right now. And there's a lot of misinformation, perhaps a little touch of fear about it. So what we are very, very pleased to speak to you about is to welcome Rabbi Ben Newman, who is a co-rabbi in Pleasantville, New York, but more important for our cases today is the author of this very, very, very interesting book called AI for Clergy, harnessing the power of the digital golem for spiritual leadership, community, and sacred service. That's a mouthful. Ben, welcome. Welcome to Seekers of Meaning. How you doing?
I'm good. Thanks for having me, Richard.
This is it's a fascinating book available on Amazon, and I guess you can contact you for an order also through your website, which is what?
RabbiBenNewman.com.
What is for us old people? Give me the Southern New Jersey layman's definition of artificial intelligence.
So artificial intelligence is a very, very broad term for a computer system that can do tasks that normally require human intelligence, like understanding language, recognizing patterns, making predictions, generating images, basically anything human intelligence can do at this point, artificial intelligence can do.
So then why, a simple question, as clergy, and we have numbers of clergy who connect with us, why do I, as a clergy person in the first part of the 21st century, need this book?
I think a lot of clergy people are curious, at the very least, about artificial intelligence, as you mentioned. I think there's some reticence about it, some nervousness about it. But the reason I released the book, one of the main reasons is that I want to give clergy an opportunity to do the kinds of things that we're really called to do, which is to be a pastoral presence for people and to be with people and sort of just be there spiritually for people. Artificial intelligence really gives us the opportunity to concentrate on those things that really matter. And these are the things that artificial intelligence can't do and probably will never be able to do, like sit with somebody by their bedside and hold their hand, or be present for somebody when they've had a loss. Those are the things that artificial intelligence can never do, but there are things that it can do that can really help us out as clergy.
So how do you use it in your pulpit and your rabbinate?
It can be used in so many different ways. So it can be used in sermon writing, sermon prep. That being said, we can get into this a little bit more later, but it doesn't write for you. And that's one of the common misconceptions that I want to talk a little bit about as well. This is one of the reasons I wrote the book, is because if people can learn how to use it well, it's a really great tool. If you don't know how to use it well, it can be garbage, really.
So you have sections of the book about, writing eulogies, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So
Sure.
if I'm sitting down and I'm pressed for time, I need to write a sermon on the Torah portion of the week. Let's just, for the sake of argument, take Shemot, first portion in the book of Exodus. And I say, AI, I go on Chat GPT and I say, I need a sermon on the first Torah portion in the book of Exodus. Push a button. Is it going to generate a beautiful 3-part sermon for me?
If you just say that,
Yes.
no, it
Okay.
will not do that. And that's part of the point of what I'm saying is you have to really, there's something called prompt engineering, which is sort of like a new up and coming field, which is to figure out how to speak to these systems in ways that give you the best output. I don't just use it to write sermons or eulogies, which I do use it to do. I use it to help me translate Hasidic texts in modern, inclusive ways. I can have it translate Hasidic texts in the style of Reb Zalman Schachter Shalomi if I want to, or some other thinker that existed, or some other author. I can use it for generating an email to a difficult congregant and keeping a really nice warm tone when I'm not actually even feeling that nice warm tone. It might help me to moderate my anger a little bit. Sometimes it does do that. It helps with contracts. It can help with, obviously you have to hire a lawyer, but it can help. It's helped me in contract negotiations. It's helped me in tax documents. It's helped me in, basically anything that you can imagine, it really can help you with. So that's the first thing I wanted to finish that question. But let me go back to the second piece, which is that you really have to figure out how to talk to these systems in a way that makes it the best output. Is an old maxim from the early programmers of computers, which is garbage in, garbage out. Because if you put garbage into an AI, it'll give you garbage out. If you put a very simplistic prompt about, hey, just write me something about Shemot, it'll give you a little simple, one page, sort of generic thing about Shemot. If you specify many different things, like the tone that you want it to use, the style of writing that you want it to use, different topics that you'd like it to include, even a stream of consciousness of something, of a whole series of things that you'd like to include. If you include negative prompts within the prompt, which is things like that you don't want it to say. So don't use corny language. Don't be too flowery. One of the things I learned early on for eulogies is often it defaulted to saying we. Like, we will miss him, when for me as a clergy, if I'm doing a funeral for somebody who I didn't even know, I don't want to say we will miss them. So I included in, I've been generating over many, many funerals, like a perfect prompt for creating a beautiful hesped, a beautiful eulogy. And one of the things I included in it was, don't say we will miss him. I didn't know him, so that even to that simple of a thing. But the more specific you can get, the better.
What got you into this? What was there an aha moment somewhere saying, I see the future and I want to be part of this? Or did it just evolve just over the course of time?
Well, I was always into technology and science fiction. I had, Apple IIe as a kid, and, did basic programming with the basic language and different things like that. So I've always loved technology. I've always used technology. I was an early adopter of YouTube, many different platforms. I'm also really into science fiction. I love, Isaac Asimov and Philip K. Dick and some of the classic science fiction authors. So it's sort of part of who I am, is this sort of high tech involved person. And I actually first discovered this particular iteration, what we're calling, it's called large language models like ChatGPT. I discovered it in the early iteration about 2023 with ChatGPT 3.5 was just released. And there's this author named John Green. He's written a book called Fault in Our Stars and many other sort of young adult books. But he has a video blog, and he was talking about this new AI that was actually intelligent. And I was like, really? How intelligent could it be? So I opened it up, and this is the first thing I did. Actually, I said, write a eulogy for, and I made up a name of a person, and I said a couple of little things about him. And then, it came out with something, and it was not great, but it wasn't the old, basic programmed thing that I had on an Apple IIe, or even, something even more recent. So that's really what got me into it, was that first moment of encountering ChatGPT in its early releases and seeing how incredible it was and the potential for it. And so at that point, I just started to use it in simple ways to enhance my rabbinic work.
And I like the idea. That's why I wanted to find out about your journey through science fiction. Did you read any Arthur C. Clarke?
Of course, of course.
Okay. He was my favorite. Childhood's End. And he did the Rendezvous with Rama. His stuff was, anyway, long story, but you have this story in the book, I think in the chapter called The Soul of the Machine, the story of Joel and of Moses and Sussman, and talking about the golem. And you put the golem, the digital golem, in the subtitle of the book. Could you walk us through that little vignette in the book with these two individuals, Joel and Gerard, right? Sussman?
Yeah, so these were two of the early creators of computers. Some people say it's a story that was real and that actually happened. Some say it's sort of like a legend, like a modern urban legend. But they were talking about the golem. They were, creating computers, and they got together and they were talking about the golem. And they both found out that they were both descendants of the Maharal of Prague, who was the creator, the most famous creator of the golem. And the legend goes that the Maharal of Prague passed down to his children a secret name for creating a golem. And they said to each other, that they were both descendants, and that they both got this name at their bar mitzvah, whispered into their ear by their father or their grandfather. I remember exactly what it was, but and then their supervisor came over, the guy who was like in charge of them or whatever, and he said, "Oh yeah, I had the same thing. When I was a descendant of the Maharal of Prague too, and they whispered something in my ear at my bar mitzvah." And it's like, whether the story is true or not, there's a deep connection between the golem legend and modern artificial intelligence. Norbert Wiener was one of the founders of artificial intelligence. You can look him up. He wrote a book called Cybernetics. His other famous book was called God and Golem Incorporated. And he talks about how artificial intelligence systems and computers are the modern day golem. Isaac Asimov says it. I think I might have even included this in the book, this quote from Isaac Bashevis Singer, who was first encountering computers, and he said that computers were the modern day golem. So it's a very, very intimate relationship between the golem and artificial intelligence. And it's not just mythical or conceptual, but I think it gives us a framework and a way to think about what these systems do and how to work with them.
This is a new technology. In the course of human history, there have been tons of new technologies, from the wheel to the radio to television or even the internet. AI seems to be generating its own sense of fear. You write in the book a quote, "Artificial intelligence is not prophet, but mirror," unquote. And I think that's the garbage in, garbage out thing.
Yep.
What are people so afraid of with this? Are they really, really afraid? And even 60 Minutes did a thing on this last year, of them taking over.
Well, there is a legitimate fear, even on the part of people who create these systems, that once these systems get to the point where they blow past what's called artificial general intelligence, which is basically they're as smart as any human on this planet, if not smarter, and then they go to artificial superintelligence, that at that point they'll be like gods in a way, like way more intelligent than we could think of, and they're not programmed with any sort of ethics in the way that we have them. There isn't a legitimate fear that companies like Anthropic are working on. And I was actually talking about Anthropic and how they were started by people who left OpenAI because they felt like the guardrails were not strong enough. Anthropic created a AI called Claude. So if you log on to Claude, it's got sort of a different way of interacting with you than ChatGPT does. It's a lot more careful about its own responses. That being said, I think all of the companies have guardrails. There have been arguments that there needs to be more regulations about AI. But that brings us to another dilemma, which is if we in the West make regulations about AI and we then sort of hobble ourselves, China is not going to have those kinds of regulations. And there's a model called DeepSeek that came out that's, almost as good as ChatGPT. If we sort of slow ourselves down, then China is going to be the one who creates the most advanced version of artificial intelligence, and they might not be as careful as we are. So it's an open question and it's a toss-up. I think it's a legitimate fear. It is a legitimate fear. And there's another fear, which is a little bit more short-term, which is that it's going to take a lot of jobs away from people. One job I can guarantee you it's not going to take away is clergy, because as I said, there are things that we can do that artificial intelligence will never be able to do. And this also sort of gets into some of the discussions about the soul. And I talk a little bit about this in the book. And this relates to the Golem legend too. An AI doesn't have a soul. And they can probably never have a soul. And a golem in the legend of the golem can't have a soul. There's a whole bunch of halachic literature actually from the Middle Ages about whether a golem can count in a minyan. And the conclusion is basically no, that a golem can't count in a minyan because it doesn't have a soul of its own.
I've already started to see that conversations that when we produce the humanoid robot, will that be able to count as in part of a minyan? I've already started to see those conversations. And you write in, not only in that chapter, the soul of the machine, but you also write, I think later on in the book, around moral frameworks. I think you mentioned situations, truth-telling, correct speech, right speech, justice, these types of, I guess for the sake of argument, non-linear, non-rational things that are part of the neshama, which makes these conversations very, very interesting because there's always a what if that you allude to in the book. I mean, and again, we're speaking with Rabbi Ben Newman on his new book, AI for Clergy, Harnessing the Power of the Digital Golem for Spiritual Leadership, Community, and Sacred Service. And Rabbi Newman doesn't sugarcoat this. He does, as you read through the book, he does point out, just like we was talking about, there are certain legitimate concerns here. There are great things that this technology can do, and there are certain things that most likely it'll never be able to do. The next question I want to ask you is, given all the stuff that you're saying and the fact that we have to almost learn a vocabulary now of how to speak the input, the stuff that we, I'm going to talk to ChatGPT. I want to create a lesson plan around Maimonides. Here are certain things that I know and certain things that I like to point out. Could you write out this sort of like outline? How do we begin to prepare the community for this? And the B part of that, which occurred to me as you were speaking, where are the seminaries? And are the seminaries, regardless of the denomination, knowing what's coming and what's already here, are they including a class somewhere in the curriculum on preparing to use AI in your rabbinate?
Well, the first part is our communities. I've already started working with my education directors using AI in integrating the use of AI into education in Hebrew school, and it's been very helpful. And it's really a thought partner. It's like having a very, at least at this point, very intelligent chavruta. You can tell it to act as a expert, experiential Jewish educator with 30 years of experience, and then talk to us. And we use it as a thought partner. So, I think the example is in the book that we had a Passover, and we didn't want to do a model Seder again in one of my synagogues. And it was really the educator was like, I really don't want to do this model Seder. We've done it every year. It's sort of boring. So she started with ChatGPT, and she came up with this idea of doing, she with ChatGPT came up with this idea of doing an escape room, a Passover escape room. It was an interesting idea, and we started to bat it around, and I was doing, I love brainstorming with AI. So I started brainstorming with AI, and she and I decided an escape room is really not the best idea for a bunch of religious school kids. You don't want to lock them in a room, like it doesn't. And we had multiple levels, we had kindergarteners through seventh graders, it wasn't going to work. So we went back and forth with ChatGPT and each other, and we decided to make a scavenger hunt, which was like a Passover themed scavenger hunt with the different elements of a Seder within the scavenger hunt. And there would be sort of tasks that they had to complete as teams. And then they would get to get little clues about where the afikomen is, which was a chocolate covered afikomen. And they each found, and depending on which team won, they would get different clues. And ChatGPT was great to generate the clues and different riddles and things like that. And then in the end, the winning team was the one that found the afikomen, and it was great. It was an amazing program, and that was a collaboration between me and the educator and the AI. And so that's one example of how I'm sort of using it within the context of education in the community. The president of my current synagogue, Pleasantville Community Synagogue, he got a copy of my book, and we've been using it a lot, and he's been using it a lot to generate warm emails. One big thing that he needed help with was management of all of our community documents, like our bylaws and all of those things. He didn't know how to create a searchable AI database to do this. And one of the things I talk about in my book is this product from Google called Notebook LM. And Notebook LM, you can upload any documents you want, PDFs, Word docs, whatever, and then you can query those docs. It's like its own artificial intelligence. And so he can ask, hey, is there anything in our bylaws about, we were going to have a rabbinic intern. So he said, are there anything in our bylaws about whether we can have a rabbinic intern or not? And it, gave him a whole response about it. And then he had a back and forth about, that particular topic. So he's using it a lot. I'm using it with kids who might have a difficult time organizing their thoughts to do their bar mitzvah talk. So many of these kids have a tough time. So what I've done with a couple of children is I've recorded them just brainstorming, talking about their Torah portion. And the transcription tools are fabulous now. So like on an iPhone now, you can use your voice memo, and then you just say generate transcript, copy transcript, and you just put it right into text. And then you put it right into ChatGPT with a prompt, and you say, so-and-so is doing well, first you have to tell it the role. So you say, act as a, Jewish educator, blah, 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 blah. And then tell it what you're doing. I'm working with, Ploni Almoni on his talk about Parshat Acharei Mot, and here's his ideas. Help me figure out how to organize it. Or I might say, here's his ideas. Give me some pointed questions that I could ask him in another session that might help him generate ideas.
So,
yes.
Just what you've gone through, okay? Just what you've gone through. Which is the B part of the question. How are seminaries preparing the next generation of rabbis, cantors, educators to do exactly what you're we is there. I can see it, and a required course in addition to your Talmud codes, midrash, homiletics, etc. How to talk, how to use technology in your rabbinate, because from everything you're saying and just the example you gave, you need to know this.
I mean, I agree with you 100%, and it's part of the reason I wrote the book, because I was using all this technology, and I was like, this is required for, like, this should be required for rabbis, and not just because it's easier to be a rabbi, but it also makes you a better rabbi. Like, you can concentrate on the things that really matter, and it's like having an amazing tool. And why not use that tool? So to answer your question, I think a lot of seminaries don't know what to do at this point.
That's the point.
And like I posted, I don't want to say any names, but I posted about my book to the Reconstructionist Reconstructionist Rabbinical Association listserv.
Right.
And I got a variety of responses, but one person was really vitriolic against AI. And this person, ended up sort of got slammed by other members of the RRA about it. But there's a real fear, and not just, I would say probably not just in the more conservative elements of the Jewish community, but even in the liberal elements of the Jewish community. It's sort of like this knee-jerk anti-technology reaction that people have. The good news is I leveraged that to talk to Megan Doherty, who's the head of the RRA, and we created a seminar that I gave to the Reconstructionist rabbis, and it was great. Now the problem that I had was I was so defensive with that seminar that I ended up spending the first half an hour of an hour-long seminar telling why, talking about the ethical implications and why it's okay to use AI. And I didn't actually get to any of the practical. Well, I got to a few. I got to maybe one of the practical ways of using it, but really, I think, putting aside, there could be a whole bunch of classes on the ethics of it. Absolutely. But I think you're absolutely right. There need to be classes, a class or classes, or maybe even integrated into the curriculum of different classes, like homiletics. Like, there should be a whole, 3 sessions of homiletics on how to use it for homiletics, or, rabbinic text. How do you use it for rabbinic text? In every single subject area that rabbis study, there can be how to use AI with this. Congregational dynamics, how to work with your board, pastoral care, all of these things you could integrate across the board. I don't think ideally it wouldn't just be one class. Ideally it would be every single subject area. There should be a number of sessions on how to use AI.
Well, that's why I wanted to ask you the question, because from everything, and the fact that the kids coming up, I look at my grandchildren, their peers, elementary school kids, middle school kids, the kids in strollers walking through the park. They're growing up with this not as something new. They're growing up with this as part of who they are. And so I would assume that if we're going to be clergy dealing with them as they go through their life, this is going to be part of their reality. We need to know how to speak that. It's, again, like you said it before, learning to speak a different vocabulary in order to get the things we need to do and relate in relationship to the people we're dealing with. Before we run out of time, I just want to make sure people understand that there's a wonderful appendix at the end of the book on the techno timeline, starting with the Torah, which I think is really cool. But what also I found fascinating was chapter 14, the blessing for clergy in the age of AI, a final benediction to the fire keepers in the age of circuits. Did you write this?
Yes.
It's very interesting. In itself, the blessing itself, which begins, O clergy of the cold code breaking dawn, you who baptize bites with breath, who will carry scroll and screen, who chant psalms beside servers, who lay hands on algorithms and still anoint the grieving. The blessing itself is worthy of a class. No, I'm very because I think
I hope you caught a little Allen Ginsberg in there, because
there's a lot in there. But I think this blessing and the fact that you end the book with the blessing also says, look, this is who we are. This is this is not coming. It's here. You got to have a choice. You either learn with it and have it to be a very powerful, sacred tool, or you will be intimidated by it. And that serves nobody's purpose.
Absolutely.
Ben, real fast before we have to go, the website is?
RabbiBenNewman.com.
And AI for Clergy, available on Amazon and through Ben's website. I wish you much happiness and joy with this book. I have great success. I hope it's very needed. It really is. And I thank you for your willingness to come on and talk about it. So thank you.
Thank you for having me, Richard. I really appreciate it. And it's really nice to have a thoughtful conversation about this. And my hope is, like you said, that this can be used by clergy, not just Jewish clergy, but all across the board to help us make our lives and our rabbinates and our ministries even better.
Yeah, I hope you are able to get this into the non-Jewish clergy world and seminaries, because like you said, there's a lot here that is non-denominational in every way, shape, or form.
Absolutely.
To all of you, thank you very much for joining us on today's edition of Seekers of Meaning, the podcast TV arm of Jewish Sacred Aging. We do very much appreciate your time spending with us. If you'd like to support our work, please go to the website, jewishsacredaging.com. There's a very conveniently located donate button. If you click on it and just follow the prompts, it's real easy. Thank you. Again, if you'd like to make a suggestion or comment about the shows, email me at Rabbi Address at jewishsacredaging.com. And if you'd like to become a sponsor of several of these podcasts, also just email me. We'll take it from there. Seekers of Meaning is produced at the Broadcast Center of Lubetkin Media in beautiful Cherry Hill, New Jersey. And a big shout out to our producer, Steve Lubetkin. Again, thank you for joining us. I am your host, Rabbi Richard Address. And until we see each other again, stay safe, stay healthy, but most of all, be kind to one another. Shalom.